Prosecutors said that he deliberately induced cardiac arrest in patients so that he could then resuscitate them and impress his colleagues.
Beverley Allitt. For nearly 2 months in early 1991, young nurse Beverley Allitt intentionally harmed 13 patients in the children's ward at Grantham and Kesteven Hospital in Lincolnshire, England. 4 of those attacks were ultimately fatal, while 9 survived but were left seriously injured.
A chilling pattern had emerged from the collapse of 13 children, 4 of whom had died.
Many of the cases were the result of insulin overdoses. Allitt came under suspicion after the death of infant Claire Peck on April 22, 1991. After she was apprehended, medical experts believed Allitt suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
This is when an individual creates false symptoms in somebody else, usually somebody that they're in charge of.
In May 1993, Allitt received 13 life sentences for multiple charges, including murder, attempted murder, and causing grievous bodily harm. Due to her mental illness, she served her time at Rampton Secure Hospital in Nottinghamshire.
Even after sentence, when she was seen at Rampton Hospital, not once has she ever expressed any remorse for what she's done.
Lucy Letby. As of writing, Lucy Letby's trial is ongoing. However, the notoriety of her alleged crimes warranted inclusion. In the mid-2010s, the neonatal intensive care unit at England's Countess of Chester Hospital had an alarming increase in infant deaths. During the years-long investigations, nurse Lucy Letby, whose work schedule coincided with the many fatalities, was arrested as a murder suspect and eventually charged with 8 counts of murder and another 10 counts of attempted murder.
Today she appeared before a judge charged with the murders of 8 babies.
She's accused of injecting the infants with insulin and with air. When police searched her home, they found a note allegedly written by Letby saying, quote, "I killed them on purpose," and, quote, "I am evil, I did this." She has entered a plea of not guilty.
I am evil, I did this.
Kristen Gilbert. Kristen Gilbert began working as a nurse at Northampton's Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Massachusetts in 1989. During her 7 years of employment, the hospital's death rate tripled.
Kristen Gilbert murders her patients using the ultimate cover: her gender and her profession.
In 1996, 3 other nurses reported their suspicions about Gilbert, prompting an investigation. She allegedly injected high doses of epinephrine or adrenaline into patients' IVs, which caused cardiac arrest. It's speculated that Gilbert orchestrated emergencies seeking attention from her boyfriend, hospital police officer James Perrault.
And there was one person Kristen wanted to impress more than anyone: her lover.
In 1998, she was sentenced to 15 months in prison for calling in a false bomb threat to the hospital. Then in March 2001, she was found guilty of 4 murders and 2 attempted murders and sentenced to consecutive life terms with an additional 20 years.
Prosecutors believe her motive is ego.
Richard Angelo. For 7 months, Richard Angelo worked the overnight shift in the special care unit at Good Samaritan Medical Center in New York. Though he was well liked at the hospital, Angelo felt inadequate, and he put patients' lives in danger just so he could heroically save them in front of his colleagues.
But he allowed his own needs to take the lead.
He would administer paralytic drugs Pavilon and Anectine via IV, but things didn't always go according to plan, and several patients died.
He confesses to poisoning dozens of his patients over the course of months.
On October 11, 1987, elderly patient Gerolamo Kucic survived one of Angelo's attempts and identified him as the culprit. Angelo, whose lawyers claimed he had dissociative identity disorder, confessed to police, and it was determined that dozens of patients were drugged, with several dying as a result. He was sentenced to 61 years to life.
Richard Angelo is found guilty of 2 counts of murder.
The Lainz Angels of Death. In the 1980s, Lainz Hospital in Vienna, Austria employed 4 nurses' aides who murdered at least 49 patients, and possibly up to 200. Waltraud Wagner allegedly killed the first victim in 1983. She claimed an elderly patient asked for help in ending her life, and Wagner relished the power it gave her. She enlisted her fellow aides, Irena Leidolf, Maria Gruber, and Stefania Meyer, and they began murdering as a group, usually by administering lethal injections. But they also used Wagner's water cure, pouring water into a patient's throat with their nose pinched closed. The 4 killers were given sentences ranging from 15 years to life imprisonment. By 2008, all 4 had been released, Wagner and Leidolf for good behavior. Orville Lynn Majors. Licensed practical nurse Orville Lynn Majors was a favorite among patients at Indiana's Vermilion County Hospital. But suspicions arose when the hospital estimated that they had 1 death every day while Majors was on duty, but averaged 1 every 23 days when he wasn't. In March 1995, Majors was suspended from VCH, and that December, the state nursing board revoked his license. But it would be another 2 years before he was arrested for killing patients with lethal potassium chloride injections. Major's co-worker and former roommate Andy Harris testified that he said old patients, quote, should be gassed.
Investigators had gathered enough evidence to arrest Orville Lynn Majors on suspicion of murder.
Though he's suspected of up to 130 murders, Majors was charged with 7 and ultimately convicted of 6, earning him 360 years in prison.
The investigation took nearly 4 years, but in the end, it paid off. Orville Lynn Majors was convicted and sentenced to 360 years in prison.
Jane Topin.
Jane Topin, America's most prolific female serial killer, killed just to see the life drain out of her victims' eyes.
Jane Topin, born Honora Kelly, began as a nurse trainee in 1885 at Cambridge Hospital in Massachusetts, where she was given the name Jolly Jane for her pleasant demeanor. Soon, she started experimenting with morphine and atropine, using her patients as test subjects.
It was here she learned the skills to become an angel of death as she moved effortlessly among the middle and upper classes.
Topin continued as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital before she was fired for overdosing patients. She then became a private nurse and went on a spree, killing a dozen patients, including her landlord and his wife and her own foster sister. She remained largely undetected until she murdered an entire family in less than 2 months.
She was finally brought to justice in 1901 after she killed off the entire Davis family of Calumet, Massachusetts.
Topin was arrested in October 1901 and eventually confessed to 31 murders, claiming to have felt a sexual thrill from the experience. Deemed not guilty by reason of insanity, she spent the rest of her days at Taunton State Hospital.
Topin was found not guilty by reason of insanity and spent the rest of her life in a mental hospital.
Janine Jones. In October 1978, Janine Jones, a licensed vocational nurse, began working in the pediatric intensive care unit of San Antonio's Bexar County Hospital. Staff noticed an increase in infant mortality during her shifts, which dropped after she left in March 1982.
We just had no evidence of any direct connection with kids dying on Janine Jones's watch.
Despite rumors of the nurse's behavior, Jones was hired at a small pediatric clinic in August 1982, and by September, several patients had died. After lengthy investigations, in 1984, Jones was given a 99-year prison sentence for murder, and later another 60 years for almost killing another patient with heparin.
It took the jury no time to become completely convinced that she had indeed set out to kill.
To keep Jones from being released in 2018, she was charged with the 1981 murder of Joshua Sawyer. In 2020, she accepted a plea deal to drop additional charges and received a life sentence.
So she is essentially taking back control by putting in this guilty plea.
Charles Cullen. From 1988 to 2003, Charles Cullen murdered as many as 40 patients in both New Jersey and Pennsylvania, though some experts believe the real number is likely in the hundreds. As a nurse, he went from hospital to hospital, 9 in total, injecting patients with lethal doses of digoxin, insulin, and epinephrine. When he was fired for stealing medications, he just got another job and continued killing.
It was the suspicious death of a Roman Catholic priest named Florian Gall that set in motion the events that would eventually expose Charles Cullen.
He wouldn't be arrested until December 2003. His friend and co-worker at Somerset Medical Center, Amy Loughran, wore a wire to help police obtain evidence.
He was always early, always on time, crisp.
In March 2006, he received multiple consecutive life sentences, avoiding the death penalty per his plea agreement.
Are you sorry what you did?
Yes. But like I said, I don't know if I would have stopped.
Niels Högel. In 2001, hospital staff at the Oldenburg Clinic in Germany discussed the recent surge in patient deaths and resuscitations, more than half of which occurred when nurse Niels Högel was working. Like other serial killer nurses, Högel put patients in life-threatening situations so he could resuscitate them and be seen as a hero.
Prosecutors said that he deliberately induced cardiac arrest in patients so that he could then resuscitate them and impress his colleagues.
He was asked to resign a year later, but was given a positive recommendation and continued his methods at Delmenhorst Clinic. In June 2005, he was caught giving a patient the arrhythmia-inducing drug Adrenaline.
And then on a single weekend on Högel's shift, there were 14 resuscitations and 5 deaths. And yet Högel was simply transferred to another ward.
In 2018, Niels Högel was charged with 100 counts of murder. He only admitted to 43, but was ultimately convicted of 85 and sentenced to life imprisonment. He's suspected of killing roughly 300 patients in all.
Still, the legal proceedings have not yet been completed. Fellow nurses, doctors, supervisors, who among them was complicit in Niels Högel's crimes?
Check out these other clips from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.